Welcome back to the SEO Weekly, where queries are weird, advice is controversial, and everything depends. I'm your host, Garrett Sussman of iPullrank, and thanks for noticing. Yes, I am in a new location. I'm very excited about it. We lost the purple, we gained the blue. I think it works. Let's move on. So this week, Google did start rolling out a core algorithm update as of yesterday. Naturally, with a lot of SEOs knowing that there's potential fluctuations in the rankings, there is a sky is falling mentality. Barry Schwartz did ask, why are you doing this to Danny Sullivan and John Mueller? Why are you doing this right before Black Friday, which is one of the most important times of years for a lot of e-commerce websites? John and Danny responded in the thread, and I 100% respect where they're coming from. John said, "What did you have in mind? I can understand the anxiety involved. I suspect most of the folks following along here don't see broad negative effects. How do you put them at ease without not informing of the change? Happy for any tips folks have." And then Danny responded as well with a longer thread. He basically said, "Barry, we said we had an update last year later in the season. Years and years ago, there was this thing about trying not to do updates around this time. I don't think we've said anything like that recently, like you suggest, and also it's really not what most need to worry about. I totally get the concerns some might have about an update, especially when there's often any number of the sky is falling tweets that people make, sometimes with fun GIFs and meant to be fun." I said GIFs, not GIFs. "But others that act like an update is a negative event for everyone. The reality is core updates make no huge change for most. People shouldn't be panicking. Maybe more tweets assuring people would be more helpful than the virtual red alert. Guidance about core updates hasn't changed. Been doing best practices out there for ages, should be good. I'll add, we do understand the timing concerns out there, given we did an update last year in the middle of the shopping season and that largely seemed not a huge issue. Getting one out of the way before the season didn't seem a problem, especially as said, most won't see changes, but we'll give it more consideration. The point of any update isn't to cause concern. If we can move timings around to ease those, we do look to that and certainly will take this feedback in mind." And I think Danny explains it really well. He's a great liaison for Google. What it comes down to, and it's funny, it's almost like the EAT principles of expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Trustworthiness is the core factor here, right? A lot of SEOs don't necessarily trust that Google is going to get the adjustments of the algorithm correctly and ultimately will require a calibration. And so that's why the timing's such a big issue. It's rolling out now. We'll see who it impacts. Keep your eyes peeled. Hopefully it doesn't impact you negatively, but if you're doing best practices, hopefully it doesn't. So controversial opinions time, but this week John Mueller came out and said, well, bolding does impact your SEO. Bolding text will have an impact, however slight, on your rankings. And, this is one of those sort of seemingly trivial things that the whole SEO community got up in arms with. On the one hand, you had people saying, oh my God, you're gonna have people bolding their entire pages and it's gonna be such bad content. And then on the other side, you have people saying, well, I honestly, I'm not gonna worry about it. Sure, it's good spelling, good punctuation, good grammar, but it's not gonna rock the boat. Ultimately, when it comes to bolding, you need to use it with a deft hand, with tact. You don't want to just bold everything. You don't want to just bold keywords, but the idea is if you're providing emphasis on some text in your content, it'll be communicating to Google that content is important. It was really interesting. Kim Dowdy has her lukewarm take. Her thoughts on the whole bolding controversy was, if you think about bold text as a kind of mini H tag for body copy, it shouldn't be surprising that Google takes notice of it for ranking. Nor is it particularly bad or extreme that Google takes it into account. So many people already keyword stuff their H tags anyway. And I think that's the fear, is that, people would use bolding text in the same ways that they stuff keywords. I think it can enhance when used correctly, and I don't think it would necessarily hurt to do too much, but if people are choosing to do that's on them. I don't think it's necessarily a bad recommendation out there. So there you go. There's my controversial take. This week was the 1-year anniversary of the creation of the Google Search Central kind of repository, a place where all the best practices and documentations and updates to search could happen in one place. What made it really interesting was that you're seeing the search team, the search relations team, basically acknowledge all the SEO work that they're doing to make their documentation and best practices more discoverable on Google. So they put together a little blog post kind of reflecting on the past year, what they tried to do, what they weren't able to, what works. Appreciate that transparency. So what they were trying to do was they worked with SEOs to improve their content, including content migration, keyword research, metadata improvements, and more. They added more documentation. They added a widget to the homepage to surface key info, and they reflected on what worked and what didn't for the SEO community. Now, it's almost entertaining because a couple of weeks ago, Google actually put out a job advertisement for an SEO, and you always laugh to yourself. You're like, oh, the search engine needs help with SEO. But the truth is, they want to eat their own dog food. A couple of the challenges that they ran into and they recognized, which is probably good for the team to go through, was languages are hard. One site move for a single language is difficult enough, but add 13 other localized sites with their own URL patterns that require separate JavaScript redirects, and you end up with a headache. They said we should really eat our own dog food. Turns out JavaScript redirects are just as good as meta redirects. They found that the RSS is still popular enough that they had to add it to the new blog. They found that de-SEOing, as weird as it sounds, but you really want to capture the good traffic, and working with SEOs on a site about SEO can hurt your brain. You're optimizing the thing that talks about optimizing the thing. Talk about meta, getting meta about meta, and this isn't even Facebook related. John Mueller came out with the Google Search News on YouTube. Great video of John just kind of walking through a lot of the changes that happened over the last few months, a lot that we've covered on this program, like continuous scrolling or e-commerce best practice documentation. Great video. Love the way that John explains it. Check that out. And one other find from Saad, he's been on the site in the past when we were talking search on about mum rollout and some of the visual search, but he found found in videos feature, which is pretty cool. It's just highlighting that Google's now having these moments where there's a feature snippet where there's videos that have something related to the query in the actual video. So it's like mum identifying the video content and surfacing it in the appropriate query. I love that. There are a couple of good Twitter threads this week. Good intentions from Myriam Jessier, where she was asking for predictions for 2022, but there are a lot of snarky responses, and I had to capture some of them. I'm sorry, Myriam, but it was a great thread, and you should see the serious ones as well. She wrote, starting early, what are your SEO predictions for 2022? No need to be an expert. I just want your opinion. All folks are welcome. So first off, John Mueller said, the subdomains and the subdirectories, season 17, the rogue indexation. Andrew Huntington said, 453,903 pages will be published with the word ultimate and the year 2022 in them. Simon Hesseltine said, Google will change something. SEOs will complain and publish 11 articles about the change before it's even finished rolling out, and before the impact is fully known, Google will roll it back slightly. SEOs will live with it, repeat, ad infinitum. Ad infinitum. I can read, I can. Clorinda said, I think there will be many more indexing issues in the coming years for two reasons: cruddy internal linkings, bad signals, site structurings, etc. They are age-old issues that few seem to learn from, and two, cruddy content. Sean Johnson chimed in, there will be only one organic search result on the first 10 SERPs that is not a Google property. Gotta love snarky SEOs. I love you folks. You guys make me laugh. It's all good stuff. Meanwhile, in Mazland, on the Twitter thread, Maz asked, how would you explain SEO to a kid? We go from snarky to heartfelt and heartwarming. This were some of the greatest responses that I saw there. Old Gather Up and Lead Ferno friend Aaron Wyke said, it's like playing hide and seek, except you want to be found. Alessia Korobka said, when you search for your Minecraft mods and I have a website featuring one you are looking for, I make sure that it's my site that is #1 result for your search. Sarah said, Google is one big book, and we organize the chapters so it's easy for you to find. Morgan Petrov thought it was, we make things go on Google, which is also how I explain this to my parents, friends, and even coworkers. And Chiara Brancato said it's like a car race. Google is the racetrack where all the cars, websites, compete to stand up on the podium, the top of the SERP. To win the competition, your car needs to have a powerful engine, the SEO content. May the best man or woman win. And out of nowhere, Lazrina Stoy dropped an awesome Twitter thread all about search intent keywords for international keywords, which has a lot of challenges. She gave a talk recently and actually wrote an accompanied blog post all about it, but it's like, how do you handle, when you have different languages or you have different kind of colloquialisms or idioms or, basically dealing with the international is really challenging. The same word might mean two different things depending on the language. Well, she put together some solutions and some actual strategies. She pointed out that, what are your options to do search intent? I mean, you could use like a Google Data Studio, where she actually has a nice report that she's put together. Google Sheets. You could use SEMrush. They just came out with search intent, or you could just use your gut like Arnold, or Sorcery, or that matter. Or you could use the strategies that she recommends. And so the ones that she put together and she walks through it in the blog, which is really nice, are using regex strategically to identify keyword variations, building behavior data sets using Google Analytics, Google Search Console, and Google Trends data. And then finally, consult a local SEO expert, which makes sense. Like when you want to localize, it's important you know what's going on in the location. So reach out, talk to someone who knows the insides and outs about it. And if you don't know regex, stay tuned. There's a cool new tool at the end of towards the end of the video, all about how to learn it. Some really cool studies and articles came out this week. To start off, Mitul Gandhi from SEOClarity, he and his team, hat tip to Mark Chaphagen for pointing this out, put out their 2021 CTR research study. A lot of great insights. It is a full report to download, but some of the key takeaways that they highlighted were click-through rates have declined significantly, especially for top positions since their last study. Click-through rates for position 1 decreases from 8.17% on desktop to 6.74% on mobile devices. Searches without a click of an organic result on page 1 or page 2 account for an estimated 65% of searches. And mobile users are less likely to click top-ranked listings than desktop users. I think a lot of the insights here are that the click-through rate is declining, whether that's due to more featured snippets coming out or, clicking on ads for whatever reason. There's something about the layout that people are clicking to the actual websites less and less, unfortunately. Sweet article from Tory and Tyler Tafelsky on Screaming Frog, all about conducting an SEO content audit. And they got 6 things that you might be overlooking. You got to check out that article. Another great one from the team there. 6 things included: ensure content is being fully accessed and rendered. Hello, JavaScript SEO. Audit core web vitals and optimize for page speed. Audit index bloat and keyword redundancies and prune mindfully. Determine and improve pages where you're losing users. Leverage content gaps inspired by competitors and keyword data. And consider non-SEO segments and overall conversion value. I love what Tory and Tyler did here. Tory's just crushing it. Her whole team is putting out such great content. Love that. Moving on. Shopify SEO, an ultimate guide. So my man Nitin Manchanda from Botspresso put together like an epic, actionable breakdown of what you should be doing for your Shopify SEO. I think it's super valuable, especially with like a week ahead of Black Friday and then the whole holiday season coming up. It's never been more important to be visible, and Shopify does give you a lot of tools to do that for your website. So, aside from all the beautiful infographics that his team put together, he broke this down to a few different sections covering dealing with duplicate product pages, dealing with internal links to canonicalized pages, editing robots.txt files now and what you can do to help SEO, bulk no index and use cases, implementing structured data markup, and content optimization on product and collection pages. So if you have a Shopify site and you're working on the SEO, definitely check out that article. Also, feel free to check out the interview that I did last week with Christina Azarenko. We talked about different CMSs and e-commerce, especially ahead of Black Friday. That was a cool podcast on Rankable Live. With technical SEO, Jono Alderson and Andy Volpini delivered a special chapter for the Web Almanac by HTTP Archive, all about structured data. It was a really great deep dive. I love what they did. They highlighted like the different structured data types, whether it's like JSON or microformatted data. They broke down how much it's used across the web, how it plays into semantic webs, how you can use it, and then kind of what you want to think about like future proofing in the sense of as people adopt more of these and these standards kind of evolve, how you can literally roll with the punch, not literally roll with the punches, figuratively roll with the punches. But it's a great article, and that whole almanac is freaking awesome by the HTTP Archive team. Great work, Jono and Andy, on that. A couple of cool tools that came out this week. The first one is from Alexis Rilko. Alexis created this really dope Google Discover Insights tool where you basically connect it to your Google Search Console. It takes a look at your Google Discover data and then highlights a bunch of really interesting reports that you can use to, actionably change the type of content that you're creating. He says it's ideal for news publishers and whatnot, the folks who are already appearing on Google Discover. But some of the reports you'll find are how many pages appear in Google Discover per day from your site, what is the lifespan of your pages in Google Discover, which terms in your headline are most efficient in Google Discover, and how does the article length impact performance. So all those are really cool reports. I love the design of it. It's very visual and clearly, visualizes what that data actually means. So it's not just like looking at numbers and hoping you can kind of pick it apart. Last week I mentioned Annie Cushing's Regex in the Real World article. Well, if you don't know Regex and you want to learn it, there was a really cool tool created by Ikat Kardash, and it's basically Learn Regex. It's gamified. It's almost like a Code Academy style where you just kind of play around with it, follow the instructions, 55 different steps, and hopefully it helps you, learn Regex so you can use it effectively. And that about does it. Yesterday, I had a great Rankable podcast interview with Ram Fishkin, where we talked about men's fashion and home cooking. No, well, we did talk about that, but we talked all about audience research and how you can do that as a modern marketer. He co-founded Sparkturo, which is an awesome tool that helps you kind of surface the way that your ideal customers, consume content, where they are, what publications they read, what podcasts they listen to. Check that out. We are taking a break on both the SEO Weekly and the Rankable podcast next week. But don't you worry. We'll be back the following week. I've got an early special Rankable Live with Simo Ahava. He's going to join me to talk about Google Tag Manager and some really creative ways that you can use that and how potentially it impacts your SEO. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please, if you're enjoying this, subscribe, turn on notifications, like the video, share it on the Twitters, on the Facebooks, on the LinkedIns, wherever you can, and leave a comment. Let me know how you're feeling. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this. I know it's been a beast of a video, but it's fun, right? We love SEO. My name is Garrett Sussman of iPullrank, and I will catch you in 2 weeks.